The nurse looked at me like I'd just sprouted a second head. I sat in the exam room holding a plastic cup, thinking about the $50 they promised for this donation. $50 might buy me 3 more nights at the Sunset Motel before the manager started pounding on my door again. The walls there were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's television through the drywall, some game show where people screamed over washing machines. "Sir," her voice cracked, "you need to stay here." "Lady, I just need the money. How long does this usually take?" She didn't answer, just backed out of the room with her eyes locked on the sample like it might explode. I'd been Michael Harvey for 48 years. Built a company from nothing. Harvey and Sons Construction, even though I never had sons. Just me and a team of guys who knew how to swing hammers and read blueprints. We renovated homes across Denver, turned disasters into dream houses. Made good money too, until my partner decided a kickback deal with a supplier was worth more than our friendship. One sabotaged contract later, and the whole thing collapsed like a house built on sand. That was 8 months ago. 3 weeks ago, my wife walked out. Sophia. Beautiful, ambitious, 35 years old with a PR job at a cruise corporation and an ego the size of the Pacific Ocean. She stood in our living room with 2 suitcases and said words I'll never forget. "You're dragging me down, Michael. I can't be married to a failure." Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I'd laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was throwing something through the window. A failure? I built a company from scratch. And lost it just as fast. I deserve better than this. She left. 4 hours later, she posted a photo on social media, wrapped around some guy on a bright red sport bike. The caption read, "New chapter, new energy," with 3 heart emojis. I recognized the bike immediately. Kawasaki ZX-10R, racing red, the kind of machine that costs more than most people's cars. The guy holding the handlebars wore a leather jacket with racing stripes and sunglasses that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Jake Lawson. I'd done some searching after seeing that photo. According to his social media, he was a motorsport consultant who traveled to track days and advised high-performance clients. His feed showed him at fancy restaurants, standing next to expensive bikes, always wearing that same confident smirk. I knew a fraud when I saw one. I'd worked construction long enough to spot the difference between real craftsmen and the guys who showed up with pristine tool belts and soft hands. Jake Lawson had that same energy, too polished, too perfect. But Sophia ate it up. Within a week, she was calling my phone. "Michael, I need you to sign the divorce papers quickly. I'm not spending my life waiting on you to process your feelings." "Feelings? You left 3 weeks ago. And I'm trying to move forward. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Funny," I said. "I thought you were already moving forward, on someone else's motorcycle." She hung up. The doctor who walked into the exam room looked like he'd just finished running a marathon. His face was flushed, and he carried a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. "Mr. Harvey, I'm Dr. Leon Reed. I need to ask you some very important questions." "Look, Doc, I just want my $50. "Mr. Harvey." He sat down across from me, his expression surgical in its intensity. "You have RH null type. Do you understand what that means?" "No." "It's called golden type. There are approximately 43 people in the documented world who have it. Your variant is even rarer. We'd like to run additional genetic screening, but that's secondary to the immediate situation." "Which is?" "There's a man in Monaco. A billionaire. His condition is critical. He needs a transfusion, and you're the only compatible donor within reachable distance who matches his secondary markers. His family has authorized me to make you an offer." He slid a paper across the desk. I looked at the number. "Read it twice?" Read it a third time, because surely I'd misunderstood. "That's not a real number." "It's very real. Half now, half after the second donation in 6 months. All travel expenses covered. Medical monitoring included. You'll be saving a man's life, Mr. Harvey." I leaned back in the chair. 3 days ago, I'd eaten ramen noodles for dinner because I couldn't afford anything else. Yesterday, Sophia called me a broke loser who couldn't hold a company together. This morning, I'd walked into this clinic thinking about $50. Now, I was looking at enough money to rebuild everything I'd lost, and then some. "When do we start?" Dr. Reed smiled, thin and professional. "Immediately." I signed the preliminary paperwork right there. They took fluid samples, collected what they needed, and scheduled the appointments. The whole process felt surreal, like I'd accidentally walked into someone else's life. A better life. One where the universe didn't just kick you when you were down, but occasionally threw you a rope. When I walked out of that clinic 2 hours later, the first payment was already processing. My phone buzzed with a notification from my bank, a deposit so large it didn't look real. I sat in my car in the parking lot and laughed until tears ran down my face. Then I called Sophia. She answered on the third ring. What? Just wanted to let you know I won't be signing those divorce papers quite yet. I've got some things to take care of first. Michael, stop being petty. This is childish. Childish? No, Sophia. Childish is running off with a guy who rents his personality from a catalog. I'm just taking my time, making sure everything is handled properly. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not the broke loser you thought you were leaving behind. But don't worry. You'll figure that out soon enough. I hung up before she could respond. Let her chew on that for a while. The Sunset Motel had a neon sign that flickered between vacancy and no vacancy, like it couldn't make up its mind. I'd been living there for 2 weeks, ever since the eviction notice on my old apartment became official. Room 12 smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner, and the bed sagged in the middle like a hammock. But I wasn't staying there anymore. I found a new apartment in a decent part of town, 2 bedrooms, actual windows that didn't have bars on them. The landlord didn't even blink when I paid the first and last month's rent in cash. I bought real furniture, not the garage sale specials I'd been living with. I bought groceries that didn't come in packages labeled value size. I bought clothes that fit properly, and I started training. Nothing crazy. I wasn't trying to become some action hero, but I was 48 years old, and I'd let myself go soft during the years of building a company. I joined a gym that didn't smell like a locker room accident and hired a trainer who looked like he could bench press a truck. His name was Marcus, and he didn't waste time with pleasantries. You're weak, he said during our first session. Not overweight, just weak. Your core is compromised, your cardio is non-existent, and you move like your joints are made of rust. Tell me how you really feel. I just did. We're fixing this. You've got decent genetics, though. We work this right, you'll be functional in 3 months. Functional. What a word. But he wasn't wrong. After 2 weeks of training, I could climb stairs without breathing hard. After 4 weeks, I could see muscles in my arms that I'd forgotten existed. The DNA analysis Dr. Reed ordered came back with interesting results. He called me into his office to explain. Mr. Harvey, you have a genetic marker that's extremely rare. It's associated with heightened stress resistance and recovery efficiency. Not superhuman, nothing like that. But your body processes cortisol differently than most people. You recover faster from physical exertion, and you maintain clarity under pressure. It's why you're seeing results so quickly in your training. So, I'm built to handle stress? More or less. Think of it as a biological advantage. Most people would have crumbled under the circumstances you've experienced. You didn't. This explains part of why. I thought about that as I left his office. Sophia used to say I was too calm, too controlled, like nothing ever bothered me. She'd wanted drama, emotional explosions, grand gestures. I'd given her stability instead, and she'd walked away from it. The first confrontation with Jake happened at a cafe downtown. I'd been tracking Sophia's social media posts, watching her parade around with her new boyfriend. They posted photos constantly. Jake on his bike, Sophia on the back, arms wrapped around him. Captions about living fast and no regrets. I knew where they hung out, a trendy spot near the city center, all exposed brick and overpriced coffee. I walked in on a Saturday afternoon and found them at a corner table. Jake was talking loudly about some track day he'd attended, how he'd smoked everyone in his class. Sophia saw me first. Her face went pale. Michael, what are you doing here? Getting coffee. Didn't know you two owned the place? Jake looked me up and down, his expression somewhere between amused and dismissive. Up close, he looked exactly like his photos. Too much cologne, perfectly styled hair, the kind of guy who checked his reflection in every surface. You're the ex-husband? He said. Still technically the husband. Paperwork takes time. Yeah, well, Sophia's moved on. Maybe you should too. I ordered a coffee at the counter, then walked back to their table. Sat down in the empty chair. Nice bike outside, I said. ZX-10R. Expensive machine? Jake's chest puffed out. Yeah, I've had it for a year. Custom paint job, racing suspension, the works. Really? Because I ran the plates. That bike belongs to Mile High Motorsports Rental. You're 3 payments behind, Jake. They're going to repo it any day now. The color drained from his face. Sophia stared at him like he'd just confessed to a crime. That's a misunderstanding, Jake stammered. I'm buying it out. The title transfer is in process. Right, and I'm sure your job as a motorsport consultant pays enough to cover it. Tell me, how much does a part-time mechanic at Discount Auto make these days? Sophia's voice was sharp. Michael, leave, now. I'm just having a conversation. Public place, public conversation. Jake stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You need to go, old man. Old man? I'm 48, Jake. You're what, 42? 43? We're practically the same generation. He looked like he wanted to take a swing. His hands were balled into fists, his jaw clenched. But we were in a crowded cafe, and he wasn't stupid enough to start something with witnesses. I finished my coffee slowly, letting the silence hang. Then I stood up, nodded at Sophia, and walked out. Behind me, I heard her voice, low and furious. Is that true? About the bike? I didn't stick around for Jake's answer. Jake tried to run. I was walking to my car when I heard the Kawasaki's engine roar to life. The parking lot wasn't busy, just a handful of cars scattered around. Jake came flying out of the cafe entrance, Sophia yelling something behind him. He hopped on the bike, kicked it into gear, and tore out of the lot like the pavement was on fire. I got in my car and followed. Not a high-speed chase. Nothing dramatic. I just kept him in sight, staying 2 or 3 car lengths back. He was heading toward the industrial district, probably toward that rental place I'd mentioned. Mile High Motorsports was on the east side, near the rail yard. Jake wasn't a good rider. He was fast, sure, but he had no sense of flow. He braked too hard at corners, accelerated too aggressively, rode like every stretch of road was a drag strip. The Kawasaki was a beautiful machine, all power and precision, and he was wasting it. We hit a construction zone. Orange cones lined the street, and a barrier blocked the right lane. Jake tried to split the gap between the barrier and a parked cement mixer. Tried and failed. He clipped the barrier with his rear tire. The bike wobbled, overcorrected, went down hard, sliding across the asphalt in a shower of sparks and plastic shards. Jake tumbled with it, his body rolling twice before he stopped against a pile of gravel. I pulled over and got out. He was conscious, groaning, one hand clutching his ribs. The Kawasaki lay on its side, 10 feet away. The fairing cracked, the mirror snapped off. Jake looked up at me through his scratched visor, his expression somewhere between pain and panic. You ran me off the road, he gasped. I was 3 cars back. You ran yourself off the road. I walked over to the bike, crouched down next to it. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but it wasn't cheap either. New fairing, new mirror, probably some scuffed frame sliders, a few $1,000s in repairs. Money Jake didn't have. Here's the thing about fast bikes, I said. They're only as good as the person riding them. You can't buy skill, Jake, and you definitely can't rent it. He tried to stand up, winced, and stayed down. Sophia's going to hear about this, he said. I'm counting on it. I got back in my car and drove away, leaving him there with his broken bike and his bruised ego. That night, my phone rang. Sophia's name lit up the screen. What did you do? She said, her voice shaking. I went for a drive. Jake went for a ride. He's not very good at it. He could have been seriously hurt. He's fine. Bruised ribs, maybe. Scratched paint. But fine. Michael, this has to stop. You're obsessed. You're stalking us. Obsessed? No. Interested? Maybe. I find it fascinating, Sophia. You left me because I lost a company. You took up with a guy who's drowning in debt, riding a rental bike he can't afford, working a job that barely covers his rent, and you thought that was trading up? Silence on the other end. Jake told me he owns that bike. Jake tells you a lot of things. How many of them do you think are true? She hung up. I sat on my couch in my new apartment, staring at the blank television screen. My reflection stared back, sharper than it had been in months. The training was showing. My shoulders looked broader. My jaw looked harder. I didn't look like a man who'd lost everything anymore. I looked like a man who was taking it back. Alan Pierce had been my attorney for 6 years, handling contracts and property disputes for Harvey and Sons. When the company went under, I couldn't afford to keep him on retainer. But now, with the Monaco payments clearing, I called him back. He met me at his office downtown, a sleek space with glass walls and a view of the mountains. Alan was 45, thin, balding, with the kind of dry humor that made depositions bearable. Michael Harvey, he said, shaking my hand. Back from the grave. Something like that. I heard about the separation. I'm sorry. Don't be. I need your help making sure it stays clean. We sat down in his office, and I laid it out. The joint accounts, the shared credit cards, the house we'd bought together, now sitting empty because neither of us could afford it alone. She's been using the accounts? Alan asked. Like they're hers. Dinners, shopping, trips. I want it stopped. You want to freeze the accounts? Legally. No games, just make sure she can't access anything that's mine. Alan leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his desk. We can do that. file a motion, get a temporary restraining order on the accounts pending the divorce proceedings. She'll still have access to anything that's solely hers, but joint accounts get locked until the court decides how to split them. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Depends on the judge's schedule. Do it. The paperwork went through faster than I expected. Alan was good at his job. Within 10 days, Sophia's access to our joint accounts was frozen. I knew because she called me at 2 a.m, screaming, "You froze my accounts. I can't pay my rent." "Our accounts," I said, my voice calm. "Joint accounts. The court froze them." "This is insane. You're punishing me because I left you." "I'm protecting my assets. There's a difference." "I need that money, Michael." "Then get a lawyer. Figure it out. You said you were moving forward, remember? So move forward." She hung up, but not before I heard her voice crack. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Jake." I didn't respond. 3 days later, he showed up at my gym. I was in the middle of a bench press set when I saw him in the mirror. He was standing near the free weights, arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. It wasn't working. His ribs were still taped from the bike accident, and he moved like every breath hurt. I finished my set, racked the bar, and sat up. "Jake, didn't know you had a membership here." "I don't. I came to talk." "So talk." He glanced around, making sure no one was too close. "You need to back off, man. Sophia and I are together. You lost. Move on." "Lost?" I stood up, wiping sweat from my face with a towel. "Jake, I didn't lose anything. I got rid of unnecessary weight. There's a difference." His face flushed. "She's happy with me?" "Is she?" Because from where I'm standing, she's realizing she jumped from one sinking ship to another. "Only difference is, I'm rebuilding. You're just sinking faster." "I've got money coming in. Big deals in the works." "Sure you do. Let me guess, another motorsport consulting gig? Maybe you'll rent another bike you can't afford and pretend it's yours?" He took a step closer. "You think you're tough now? Going to the gym, playing games?" "I don't think anything, Jake. I know. I know you're broke. I know you're lying to Sophia. I know that bike you crashed is going to cost more to fix than you make in 6 months. And I know that sooner or later, she's going to figure out that she traded a man who built something for a man who fakes everything." Jake's hands were shaking. He wanted to swing. I could see it in his eyes, that desperate need to prove something. But we were in a public gym, surrounded by people, and he wasn't that stupid. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right, it's not." He turned and walked out, moving stiffly. Marcus, my trainer, came over a minute later. "Friend of yours?" he asked. "Not exactly." "Looked like he wanted to start something." "He did, but he won't." Marcus grinned. "Good. I hate cleaning up messes." The motorsport club Jake belonged to was called Apex Riders. I found their clubhouse through some online searching, a converted warehouse near the rail yards. They held meetups every Friday night, riders showing off their bikes, talking about track days and lap times. I showed up on a Friday in late October. The parking lot was full of motorcycles, sport bikes mostly, a few cruisers scattered in. Guys stood around in groups, leather jackets and branded gear, the smell of exhaust and engine oil thick in the air. I parked at the edge of the lot and walked toward the entrance. Jake was there, leaning against the damaged Kawasaki. The fairing was still cracked, the mirror still missing. He'd tried to cover the scratches with some kind of touch-up paint, but it looked worse than before, like a patch job done in a hurry. He saw me and straightened up, his expression darkening. "What are you doing here?" "Public place. Thought I'd check out the bikes." "You don't ride." "Never said I did. But I appreciate engineering. That Kawasaki, for example. Beautiful machine. Shame about the damage." A few guys nearby turned to look. One of them, a tall guy with a beard and an Apex Riders patch on his jacket, stepped over. "This guy bothering you, Jake?" "It's fine," Jake said quickly. "He's just leaving." "Actually," I said, "I was hoping someone could tell me about the rental policy here. Do you guys work with Mile High Motorsports? I heard they're pretty flexible with payment plans." Jake's face went white. The bearded guy frowned. "Rental? Jake, you told us you owned that bike." "I do own it. He's lying." I pulled out my phone, showed them a screenshot of the rental agreement I'd found through some creative searching. Public records, nothing illegal, just thorough. Says here the bike is registered to Mile High Motorsports. Jake Lawson is listed as a renter. 3 payments overdue, total balance owed, including late fees, is about $8,000. The bearded guy took the phone, read it, and handed it back. His expression shifted from confusion to disgust. You've been lying to us this whole time? It's a misunderstanding, Jake said desperately. The title transfer is in process. I'm buying it out. With what money? You're behind 3 payments. They're going to repo that thing any day now. Other riders were gathering now, sensing drama. Jake looked around like a trapped animal, his confidence crumbling. This is between me and the rental company, he said. No, the bearded guy said. This is between you and every guy here who thought you were legit. You've been fronting, man, acting like you're some big shot, and the whole time you're riding on borrowed wheels. I didn't stick around for the rest. I'd said what I needed to say. As I walked back to my car, I heard raised voices behind me, Jake trying to defend himself, the other riders tearing him apart with questions he couldn't answer. Sometimes you don't need to throw a hit. You just need to pull back the curtain. Sophia called me that night, her voice raw. What did you do to Jake? I told the truth. That's all. He came home in tears. He says his friends hate him now. Then maybe he shouldn't have lied to them. You're destroying him, Michael. Is this what you wanted? To ruin his life? I didn't ruin anything, Sophia. He did that himself. I just pointed it out. She was crying now, soft sobs breaking through the phone line. I don't understand why you're doing this. I left. It's over. Why can't you just let us be happy? Because you didn't just leave, Sophia. You humiliated me. You posted photos online, rubbed your new life in my face, called me a failure. You wanted me to know how much better things were without me, so now I'm returning the favor. I'm showing you exactly who you chose. He's a good man. He's a fraud, and you know it now. That's why you're calling me instead of comforting him. Silence. The bike is getting repossessed tomorrow, I said. Thought you should know. Might want to take those photos off social media before people start asking questions. I hung up. The second payment from Monaco arrived in early November. Dr. Reed scheduled my follow-up appointment. Another donation, more lab tests. The billionaire was recovering well, with an improving outlook. They wanted to keep me on call for the next year, just in case. I didn't mind. The money was life-changing. I used part of it to restart Harvey & Sons construction. Not the full company, not yet, but a small crew. 3 guys I'd worked with before, good men who knew their trade. We took on small projects, renovations and repairs, nothing flashy. But it felt good to hold a hammer again, to see something broken become whole. The work was therapeutic in a way I hadn't expected. Every wall we fixed, every floor we refinished, felt like I was rebuilding more than just houses. I was rebuilding myself. The physical labor combined with the gym training had transformed me. I'd lost the soft edges that came from years behind a desk, my hands were calloused again, my shoulders broader, my movements more deliberate. Sophia found out through mutual friends. She showed up at a job site one afternoon, her car parked at the curb, her expression unreadable. We were working on a kitchen renovation in a Victorian house near downtown, the kind of project I used to love, all intricate woodwork and hidden problems that required creative solutions. I was measuring cabinet spaces when I saw her through the window. She stood on the sidewalk for a full minute before walking up to the front door. You're working again, she said. I am. I heard you got money, a lot of it. I did. She hesitated, her hands twisting together. She looked smaller than I remembered, less polished. Her hair wasn't styled the way it used to be, and her clothes looked like she'd grabbed them in a hurry. The designer bags and perfect makeup were gone. What stood in front of me was a woman who'd realized too late that she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Michael, I made a mistake. Several, actually. I'm serious. Jake, he's not who I thought he was. The bike got repossessed. He lost his job. He's been lying about everything. I know. You knew? This whole time? From the beginning. I tried to tell you, remember? But you were too busy calling me a failure. Her eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time, not the manufactured ones she used to use when she wanted something. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You looked at me after I lost the company and decided I wasn't worth sticking around for. That's fine, Sophia. People make choices. But don't come back now and pretend it was a mistake just because your backup plan didn't work out. I still love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone. There's a difference. She wiped her eyes, her voice breaking. Can we fix this, please? I'll sign a post-nup anything. I just want to come home. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd spent years with, built a life with. She looked desperate, broken, like someone standing on the edge of a cliff realizing there was nothing behind her to catch the fall. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. just a vast, empty nothing where love used to be. Go home, Sophia. Your actual home. The one you chose when you left. I'll have the divorce papers sent over next week. Sign them. Move on. Michael, please. I know I hurt you, but we can work through this. I made a mistake with Jake. I see that now. But what we had, that was real. That was years of our lives together. What we had ended the moment you walked out that door. You didn't leave because of circumstances, Sophia. You left because of who I was. A man going through hard times. And the second things got difficult, you bailed. That tells me everything I need to know about what we had. It wasn't real. It was conditional. And I don't do conditional anymore. One of my crew members, Danny, came out of the house carrying a box of old cabinet hardware. He saw Sophia, saw the tension, and quickly retreated back inside. But the interruption had broken the moment. Sophia straightened up, trying to compose herself. The tears were still there, but her voice had hardened. You've changed. You're cold now. No, I'm just done being warm to people who only want the heat when it's convenient. You'll regret this. I doubt it. She stood there for another minute, then turned and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, and then I went back to work. That night, Jake called me. His voice was slurred, like he'd been drinking for hours. You happy now? About what? You took everything from me. My bike, my friends, my girl. You happy? I didn't take anything, Jake. You never had those things to begin with. You were renting all of it. The bike, the image, even Sophia. And when the bill came due, you couldn't pay. I could take you, old man. You know that, right? If it was just you and me, I'd wreck you. Then let's find out. Silence on the other end. I could hear his breathing, heavy and irregular. What? You heard me. If you think you can take me, let's find out. Tomorrow night. The industrial lot on 5th and Grant. Just you and me, no bikes, no friends. We settle this. You're serious? Completely. He laughed, bitter and sharp. Fine. Tomorrow night, 10 o'clock. Don't back out. I won't. Will you? He hung up. I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, wondering if I'd just made a mistake. Then I remembered Marcus's words during training. You're functional now. Not a fighter, but functional. You can handle yourself if you need to. Functional would have to be enough. I spent the next day working, trying to keep my mind off what was coming. But between every measurement and every cut, my thoughts drifted back to that phone call. Jake was desperate now, backed into a corner with nothing left to lose. That made him dangerous in a different way than I'd expected. Alan called me around noon. The divorce papers are ready. Want me to send them over? Do it. You sure about this? There's still time to negotiate, work out a settlement. There's nothing to negotiate. She gets what's hers, I keep what's mine. Clean break. All right. They'll be delivered tomorrow morning. I hung up and went back to work, but my hands were steadier than they'd been in months. The industrial lot on 5th and Grant was a graveyard for businesses that didn't make it. Old warehouses with broken windows lined one side of the street, their loading docks empty and covered in graffiti. A chain-link fence ran along the back, separating the lot from the rail yard beyond. The pavement was cracked and uneven, weeds pushing through wherever they could find purchase. I got there at 9:45, parking my car near the entrance where the streetlight still worked. The November air was cold enough to see my breath, and the wind carried the smell of diesel and rust from the trains. Jake showed up at 10 o'clock exactly, his car pulling in fast, headlights cutting through the darkness. He parked at the far end of the lot, and when he got out, I saw he wasn't alone. The bearded guy from Apex Riders was with him, the one who'd confronted Jake about the rental bike. Thought you said just us, I called out as they walked toward me. Jake's voice was rough, like he'd been yelling. He's here to make sure it's fair. No cheap moves. The bearded guy stopped about 10 feet away, crossing his arms. He looked at me, then at Jake, and shook his head. I'm just here to make sure nobody does something stupid, or stupider than this already is. Appreciate the vote of confidence, I said. Jake stepped into the circle of light from the street lamp. Up close, he looked worse than I'd expected. His eyes were reddened, his jaw tense. He moved stiffly, favoring his left side where his ribs were still healing from the bike crash. He'd been drinking, I could smell it, but he wasn't drunk, just angry and desperate and looking for someone to blame. Last chance to back out, he said. You first. He swung without warning. It was a wild punch, all arm and shoulder, no technique behind it. The kind of punch someone throws when they are used to intimidating people rather than actually fighting them. I stepped to the side, let it sail past my head, and shoved him in the chest with both hands. Not hard enough to hurt him, just enough to send him stumbling backward. He caught himself, breathing hard already, his face flushed in the cold air. "That all you got?" I said. Jake came at me again, faster this time, throwing a combination that might have worked on someone who'd never trained. Left jab, right cross, trying to overwhelm me with volume. I blocked the jab with my forearm, slipped the cross by turning my shoulder, and stepped back to create distance. Marcus had drilled this into me over the past 2 months. Defense first. Let them tire themselves out. Stay calm. "Come on," Jake shouted, circling me now. "Stop running." "I'm not running. I'm letting you figure out this isn't going to go the way you think." He charged, trying to tackle me. I sidestepped and stuck my leg out, a basic trip that sent him sprawling onto the pavement. He struck the ground hard, his hands scraping against the concrete and leaving raw abrasions on his palms. The bearded guy winced but didn't move. "You good, Jake?" Jake pushed himself up, looking at the red streaks on his hands, then at me. "You're going to regret that." Probably not. He came at me again, and this time I didn't just defend. When he threw another wild right hand, I stepped inside his guard and landed a controlled strike to his ribs. Not the injured ones, the other side. Just enough force to make him feel it, to remind him that his body had limits. He gasped and doubled over, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. "You done?" I asked. Jake looked up at me, his eyes watering from pain and rage, and shook his head. Not even close. He straightened up and tried a different approach, more cautious this time. He kept his hands up, moved in a circle, looking for an opening. For a moment, I almost respected the effort. He was learning, adapting, trying to be smarter about it. Then he lunged for my legs, trying to take me down with a tackle. I sprawled, spreading my weight, and pushed down on the back of his head. He went face first into the pavement again, harder this time. The bearded guy stepped forward. "All right, that's enough. Jake, you're done." But Jake wasn't listening. He rolled over, red streaming from his nose now, blending with the scrapes on his face. He looked up at me with something beyond anger, something closer to hatred. "You think you're better than me? You think because you got some money now, you won? She loved me, man. She chose me." "She chose an illusion," I said, "and you couldn't maintain it. That's not my fault. Everything was fine until you showed up. You ruined it. You couldn't just let us be happy." "Happy? Jake? You were 3 payments behind on a rental bike, lying to everyone about who you were, working a job you were embarrassed to admit. That's not happy. That's a house of cards waiting to fall. I just gave it a push." He tried to get up, slipped, and fell again. This time he stayed down, breathing hard, his body shaking. Not from cold, from the realization that he'd lost everything and couldn't even win this one thing. I walked past him toward where he'd parked his car. In the back, strapped down with bungee cords, was the Kawasaki. The rental company had repossessed it 3 days ago, but somehow Jake had gotten it back. Probably begged them, promised to pay, bought himself one more day with it. One last chance to hold on to the image he'd built his entire life around. I unstrapped the bike, wheeled it off the truck bed, and let it stand on its own for a moment. The streetlight caught the curves of the fairing, the aggressive stance, the raw power built into every line. It really was a beautiful machine. Fast, precise, engineered for performance. Completely wasted on someone who'd never understood what it meant to earn something. I grabbed the handlebars and pushed the bike over. It hit the pavement with a crash that echoed across the empty lot. Plastic shattered, sending shards skittering across the concrete. The mirror snapped off completely, the headlights spiderwebbed. The exhaust scraped against the ground with a sound like a scream. Jake roared and ran at me, moving faster than I'd thought he could in his condition. Pure adrenaline, pure rage, nothing held back. He slammed into me with his shoulder, and for the first time that night, I actually had to work to keep my balance. We grappled for a moment, his hands grabbing at my jacket, trying to pull me down. I broke his grip, shoved him back, and when he came at me again, I was ready. One strike, clean and controlled, right to the solar plexus, the soft spot just below the ribs, where a hit disrupts your breathing. Not hard enough to cause real damage, but hard enough to shut down his entire system for a few seconds. Jake's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, trying to suck in air that wouldn't come. He staggered backward, his legs wobbling, and then he went down hard, collapsing onto his side next to the destroyed bike. I stood over him, my breathing steady, my knuckles barely sore. The genetic marker Dr. Reed had talked about, the one that helped me process stress and recover faster, it was real. I could feel it in the way my heart rate was already dropping back to normal, in the way my muscles weren't screaming from the exertion. Jake gasped, finally getting air back into his lungs. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes, defeated in every possible way. The bearded guy walked over, looked at Jake, then at me. "You could have really hurt him." "I could have? I didn't?" Why not? Because he's not worth it. He's not worth ruining my life over. This was about showing him the truth, not destroying him. I looked down at Jake one more time. That's what happens when you try to steal a life that was never yours. Get up, Jake. That was my last hit. From here on out, gravity can take care of you. The bearded guy helped Jake to his feet. They stood there, Jake leaning heavily on his friend, with red stains and concrete dust covering his clothes. The destroyed Kawasaki lay between us like a monument to everything he'd pretended to be. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw them still standing there, two small figures in a pool of yellow light surrounded by darkness. The divorce papers arrived at Sophia's apartment the next morning. Alan called me at noon to confirm she'd received them. How'd she take it? I asked. About as well as you'd expect. Her lawyer called, wanted to negotiate. I told them there was nothing to negotiate. You're keeping your business assets, she keeps hers. Joint accounts will be split based on contribution records. The house gets sold, proceeds divided equally. She agree? She doesn't have much choice. Your prenup was solid, and all the money from Monaco is yours alone, acquired after separation. She's got no claim to it. Good. There's one thing, though. She asked if she could see you. One last conversation? No. You sure? Sometimes closure helps people move on. She doesn't need closure from me. She needs to accept that actions have consequences. Alan was quiet for a moment. You've gotten harder, Michael. No, I've just stopped being soft for people who used it against me. I hung up and went back to the job site. We were finishing up the Victorian kitchen, installing the last of the custom cabinets. Danny was working on the crown molding, his hands steady and precise. Good work. The kind of work that lasts. My phone buzzed again an hour later. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Sarah, Jake's sister. I need to talk to you about what happened last night. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. I don't know what Jake told you, but we settled our business. He told me enough. Can we meet? Please? There's something you need to know. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop downtown, the same one where I'd first confronted Jake and Sophia. Sarah was in her late 30s, with Jake's same eyes but none of his swagger. She looked tired, worn down by something deeper than a bad night's sleep. Thank you for meeting me, she said after we'd ordered. What's this about? She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. Jake's in the hospital. Broken ribs, concussion, severe bruising. He's saying you jumped him. That's not what happened. There was a witness. Ask him. I did. He told me the truth. That Jake started it. That you finished it. But that's not why I wanted to talk to you. She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. Jake standing next to a different motorcycle. This one older, beat up, clearly owned, not rented. He looked younger in the picture, maybe mid-30s, and his smile was genuine. Not the manufactured confidence I'd seen, but something real. That was 10 years ago, Sarah said, before he started pretending to be someone he wasn't. He had a decent job then, worked as a mechanic at a real shop, not the discount place. He was happy. What changed? He got engaged. Girl named Amanda. She was from money, high society, all that. Jake thought he needed to be more than he was to keep her. Started lying about his job, his money, his whole life. Rented expensive bikes, wore expensive clothes, put everything on credit cards he couldn't pay off. Let me guess, she found out. She left him, took everything, including his confidence. He's been chasing that feeling ever since, trying to recreate what he thought he had with her. Every relationship is the same pattern. Meet a woman, pretend to be successful, ride the lie until it collapses. Why are you telling me this? Sarah looked me in the eye, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Not anger, not blame, just exhaustion. Because you broke the pattern. For the first time in a decade, Jake can't pretend anymore. You took away all his props, exposed all his lies. He's got nothing left to hide behind. And you think that's a bad thing? I think it's necessary. I've been watching my brother destroy himself for years, and I couldn't stop him. Maybe you did. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the coffee shop buzzed with normal conversation, people living normal lives, unaware of the wreckage happening at our table. He's not pressing charges, Sarah said finally. I made sure of that. Told him if he tried, I'd testify about how he's been lying to everyone, including Sophia. I'd tell them about the drinking, the debts, all of it. Appreciate that. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. I did it because Jake needs to face reality, and that starts with not being able to play victim. She stood up, gathered her things. For what it's worth, I looked you up. Saw what happened with your company, your wife. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not. She nodded and walked away, leaving me alone with cold coffee and thoughts I didn't want to examine too closely. That night, I went to the gym for my regular session with Marcus. He put me through the usual routine, but I could tell he was holding back, going easier on me than normal. "I heard about last night," he said during a water break. "From who?" "You'd be surprised how small the world is. Guy I know knows a guy who rides with Apex. Word is you put Jake Lawson in the hospital. He put himself there. I just helped him realize he was out of his depth." Marcus studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You ever fought before? I mean really fought, not just sparred in a gym?" "Not until last night." "Could have fooled me. You stayed calm, controlled your breathing, picked your shots. Most people, their first real fight, they panic. You didn't." "Guess I handle stress well." "That genetic thing your doctor mentioned?" "Part of it. The rest is just understanding that panic doesn't solve problems. Action does." Marcus grinned. "You're going to be dangerous if you keep training." "Not planning on making a habit of fighting." "Good, because you're better than that. But it's nice to know you can handle yourself if you need to." We finished the session, and I drove home through the cold November streets. The city looked different now, cleaner somehow, like a fog had lifted that I hadn't even realized was there. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking spot. Sophia's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "What?" "I signed the papers." Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Good. Is that all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Sophia? Thank you? Congratulations? We're getting divorced because you walked out. This is just paperwork." "I saw Jake today. He looks awful." "Then maybe he should stop starting fights he can't finish." "You didn't have to destroy the bike? That was cruel." "It wasn't his bike. It was a rental. A symbol of everything fake about him. I just made the truth visible." She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then softly, "I really did love you, you know. At the beginning." "I know." "When did it stop?" "For me or for you. For both of us. I thought about that, really thought about it." "For you?" "Probably the day the company went under. That's when you started looking at me differently, like I was something broken that couldn't be fixed. For me, last night when you showed up at the job site. That's when I realized the woman I married didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did." "That's not fair." "Fair? Sophia, you told me I was dragging you down. You posted pictures of your new life online before the bed was even cold. You called me a broke loser and said you deserved better. Nothing about this has been fair. But it's real, and it's done." "I hope you find someone who makes you happy," she said. "I'm not looking. I'm busy rebuilding a life. That's enough for now." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my car for a long time after that, watching the windows of my apartment building, the warm lights behind curtains where people were living their lives. Somewhere up there, behind one of those curtains, was my new space. Clean, organized, mine alone. It was enough. December came in cold and brutal, the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache when you breathe. The construction projects slowed down as they always did in winter, but we kept working. There was something satisfying about being outside in the harsh weather, proving that we could handle whatever nature threw at us. The Monaco billionaire made a full recovery. Dr. Reed called me in for a final checkup and to deliver the second half of my payment. The number was just as staggering the second time, maybe more so because now it was real, tangible, sitting in my account and changing everything. "You saved his life," Dr. Reed said as we finished up the appointment. "His family wants to thank you personally. They're offering to fly you to Monaco, all expenses paid, meet the man whose life you saved. Tell them I appreciate it, but I'm good. I've got work to do here." "You're sure? It's not every day someone gets an invitation like this." "I'm sure. The money's enough. I don't need gratitude on top of it." Dr. Reed nodded, though I could tell he thought I was crazy for turning it down. Maybe I was. But I'd spent too many years doing things for other people's approval, building a company to make Sophia proud, working myself into the ground to prove I was successful. I was done performing for an audience. The divorce was finalized on December 15th. Alan handled everything, and I didn't have to appear in court, just signatures on papers, a judge's approval, and it was over. 11 years of marriage reduced to a legal document that said we were strangers again. I didn't feel sad, I didn't feel relieved, I just felt ready to move forward. Harvey and Sons Construction was growing steadily. We'd taken on 2 more crew members and had enough projects lined up to keep us busy through spring. Word of mouth was spreading that we did good work, honest work, and didn't cut corners. The kind of reputation that takes years to build and minutes to destroy. I was determined not to waste the second chance I'd been given. Jake disappeared after that night in the industrial lot. Sarah texted me once to say he'd moved back home with their parents in Colorado Springs, was getting counseling, trying to rebuild his life the right way this time. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. His story wasn't mine to follow anymore. Sophia tried to call a few more times in those early weeks of December. I never answered. Eventually, the calls stopped. I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to California, taken a job with a different cruise line based in Los Angeles, starting over in a place where nobody knew her story. Good for her. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. The Apex Riders Club actually reached out to me in late December. The bearded guy, whose name I learned was Thomas, called and asked if I wanted to come to one of their meetups. Not as a rider, but as a guest, someone who'd earned their respect by being honest when everyone else was playing games. I declined, but politely. That world wasn't mine. I appreciated the offer, but I had my own path to follow. Christmas came and went quietly. I spent it alone in my apartment, working on plans for expanding the business. Not lonely, just alone. There's a difference. Lonely is wanting company and not having it. Alone is choosing solitude and being comfortable with it. I'd learned to be comfortable with it. On New Year's Eve, I went to the gym for an early session. The place was nearly empty, most people already starting their celebrations or sleeping off their preparations. Marcus was there, always there, dedicated to his routine, even on holidays. "You got plans tonight?" he asked during a break between sets. "Sleep. Maybe watch the ball drop. You?" "Same. Getting old, Harvey. Used to be I'd party until dawn on New Year's. Now I'm in bed by 10. "Nothing wrong with that." We worked through the rest of the session in comfortable silence. By the time I left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The cold air bit at my face as I walked to my car, but it felt good, clarifying. My phone rang as I started the engine. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Harvey, this is Detective Sarah Chen with Denver PD." My stomach dropped. "What's this about?" "Nothing to worry about, sir. I'm calling because a report was filed regarding an altercation in November between you and a Jake Lawson. His sister just withdrew it officially, but I wanted to follow up, make sure there weren't any ongoing issues." "No issues. It was a disagreement between two adults. It's settled." "That's what everyone involved said. I'm just closing the loop. Have a good new year, Mr. Harvey." She hung up. I sat in the parking lot, engine running, heat slowly filling the car. That was it. The last thread connecting me to that whole mess, officially cut. Jake wasn't pressing charges. Sarah had made sure of it. The legal system had looked at the situation and decided it wasn't worth pursuing. Clean slate, fresh start, all the cliches that people throw around but rarely mean. Except this time, I meant it. I drove home through the quiet streets, past houses decorated with lights, and families visible through windows, gathered together for the holiday. Once upon a time, that would have made me feel like I was missing something. Now it just looked like one option among many, not better or worse than my own. Different paths for different people. I made dinner, nothing fancy, and ate while watching old movies. The kind of classic films that Sophia always hated because they were boring and slow. I enjoyed them. Sometimes slow is good, sometimes boring means peaceful. At 11:30, I poured a glass of whiskey and stood by my window, looking out at the city. Denver spread out before me, lights twinkling in the cold air. Life unfolding in thousands of homes and apartments and businesses. Somewhere out there, Sophia was starting her new life. Jake was trying to rebuild. The Monaco billionaire was alive because of my donation. And I was here. Alone, but not lonely. Starting over, but not starting from scratch. Carrying scars, but not wounds. The clock ticked toward midnight. I raised my glass to the window, to the city, to whatever came next. "Happy New Year," I said to nobody in particular. The clock struck 12. Fireworks burst in the distance, and I finished my drink. Then I went to bed. Because tomorrow there was work to do. January brought the kind of cold that makes you question why anyone ever settled in Denver. We had 3 projects running simultaneously, which meant I was splitting my time between job sites, keeping crews organized, making sure quality stayed high even when the weather fought us every step of the way. It was exhausting. It was perfect. I was at a site in Capitol Hill, overseeing a bathroom renovation, when Alan called. "The house sold," he said without preamble. The house. The one Sophia and I had bought together, full of memories I'd stopped caring about months ago. "How much?" he told me. After splitting everything according to the divorce decree, my half would cover the remaining business expenses and leave enough to expand Harvey and Sons into the mid-size operation it used to be. Maybe bigger. When do I get the check? 2 weeks, everything's finalized. Good. That's it? Just good? What else is there to say, Alan? It's done. I'm moving forward. He laughed, dry and knowing. You've changed, Michael. Used to be you'd agonize over every decision. Now you just make them and move on. I learned that overthinking doesn't change outcomes. Action does. We hung up, and I went back to checking tile work. Danny had done a perfect job on the shower surround, every line straight, every corner precise. This bathroom would last decades. That mattered to me more than anything involving Sophia or Jake or the past. 2 weeks later, the check cleared. I paid my crew bonuses, bought new equipment, and signed a lease on a small office space. Nothing fancy, just a place to handle paperwork and meet clients without doing it from my apartment or a job site. Harvey and Sons Construction was officially back. On a Friday afternoon in late January, I was leaving the new office when I saw her, Sophia. Standing on the sidewalk across the street, bundled in a winter coat, looking small and uncertain, I stopped. We hadn't seen each other since that day at the job site in November, hadn't spoken since the phone call when she'd signed the papers. She crossed the street slowly, like she wasn't sure she wanted to close the distance. Hi, she said. Hi. I heard about the business, that you're rebuilding it. I am. That's good. I'm glad. We stood there in the cold, two people who used to share everything, now struggling to find words. I wanted to apologize, Sophia said finally, for how I handled things, for what I said. You weren't a failure, I was just scared. Scared of what? Of being poor, of struggling. My parents lost everything when I was a kid. Foreclosure, bankruptcy, the whole nightmare. I swore I'd never live like that again. When your company went under, all I could see was that happening to us. So you ran. So I ran. To someone who looked successful, who seemed stable. I didn't look close enough to see it was all fake. She wiped at her eyes. I'm sorry, Michael, for all of it. I looked at her, this woman I'd spent years loving, and felt the last bit of anger drain away. Not because I forgave her, exactly, but because holding on to it was just carrying weight I didn't need anymore. I appreciate you saying that, I said. I hope California's treating you well. It is. Fresh start. Like you said. I think I needed it. Good. Are you seeing anyone? No. Not looking either. I'm focused on building something that lasts. She nodded, understanding. You look good, Michael. Healthy. Different. I am different. Had to be. We stood there for another moment, and I realized this was goodbye. The real goodbye, not the angry one from before. This was two people acknowledging that they'd shared part of their lives and now were going separate directions. Take care of yourself, Sophia. You too. She walked away down the sidewalk, and I watched until she turned the corner and disappeared. Then I got in my truck and drove to the gym for my evening session. Marcus put me through a brutal workout, the kind that leaves you shaking and clear-headed at the same time. Afterward, as I was leaving, he stopped me. You figure out whatever you needed to figure out? How'd you know I needed to figure something out? Could see it in the way you were moving today, like you had something on your mind. Ran into my ex-wife. She apologized. How'd that feel? Like closing a book. Good ending, bad ending, doesn't matter. Just finished. Marcus nodded. That's growth right there. Most people hold on to that stuff forever. I drove home through the dark January streets, the cold seeping in through the vents despite the heater running full blast. When I got to my apartment, I made dinner, ate while reading, and went to bed at a reasonable hour. My life had become simple. Work, gym, sleep, repeat. No drama, no complications, no pretending to be anything I wasn't, and it was exactly what I needed. The next morning, a Saturday, I went to the office to catch up on paperwork. Bills to pay, invoices to send, schedules to organize, the mundane work of running a business. I used to hate this part, but now I found it meditative. Every invoice sent was proof that I'd rebuilt something real. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview. Mr. Harvey, this is Thomas from Apex Riders. I know you said no before, but we're doing a charity ride next month for veterans. Would mean a lot if you came. Not to ride, just to be there. T. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, let me think about it. Because maybe, just maybe, I was ready to be part of something bigger than just my own recovery. Maybe I'd learned enough about being alone that I could handle being around people again without losing myself. Or maybe I'd go back to my quiet, simple life, and that would be fine too. Either way, it was my choice. Nobody else's. That's what mattered. I finished the paperwork, locked up the office, and drove to a job site to check on the progress from the week. The house we were renovating was coming along beautifully, transformation happening one nail and board at a time. Just like my life, one day, one decision, one step forward at a time. I stood in the unfinished kitchen, surrounded by sawdust and the smell of fresh lumber, and smiled. This was enough. This was everything, and I was finally okay with that.